The creative branding girly today is actually swinging the pendulum over to numbers and pricing strategy. Because even as the marketing girl, we are looking at a calendar that has a few more open dates than I like. And today, instead of panicking, we are analyzing.
Welcome to the Brand Market Podcast, the show for short-term rental owners who want to turn their listings into legacies. I'm your host, Allie Haney, owner and co-host of multiple properties and founder of Brand Market, where we help Airbnb hosts and short-term rental investors build intentional brands, smart marketing systems, and guest experiences that actually move the needle. Each week, I share practical strategies, real-life stories, and behind-the-scenes insights to help you attract the right guests, increase bookings, and run your rental like a business, so you too can be the best in your brand and your market. Let's dive in.
Despite being the marketing girly, I am looking at Luna and wishing the calendar was a bit more booked than it is. So instead of panicking, I'm diving into pricing strategy and literally everything I can get my hands on to figure out why this year looks a little bit different. To give you a little bit of context, we have been hosting since 2019 across 3 different states, North Carolina, Kentucky, and now Virginia. And this is the slowest booking season I have ever been through. Of course, with Luna, which is a new property, we don't know I did the AirDNA research, but I don't know what the seasonality looks like for this property specifically because it's our first year in service. However, even with the Commonwealth, the Kentucky property, it's looking a little bit different this year, and I'm trying to figure out why, despite all of the marketing efforts that we put in. So I am just being very real, honest, raw, authentic, all of those words. And like a previous listener has described me, boots on the ground to try and figure it out. So today we're diving into pricing strategy and looking a little bit more into why things might be happening the way they are. I'm going to start with a little bit of story time behind dynamic pricing because it was not until this time last year that I was even introduced to dynamic pricing. I mentioned that we have been hosting since 2019, and when we first opened that listing in North Carolina, it was about 5 minutes from the beach and about 20 minutes from the main side of Camp Lejeune, the Marine Corps base there. So we were pretty booked out, pretty solid occupancy all year round. But I even then had the idea of raising prices during the summer, lowering them during shoulder season, and even more during off season. So in a sense, I was doing very, very loose dynamic pricing because I was staggering the pricing based off of the seasonality of that property, being that it was near the beach. Now, looking hindsight 2020, I thought people were coming there to visit the beach. Instead, they were actually coming to visit their Marine or their sailors. So I probably didn't need to do that, but I didn't know what I didn't know. So with that being said, when I went to Level Up Your Listing Summit last year and I was introduced to PriceLabs, who was there as a sponsor, and I did not know that you could have a software to do your dynamic pricing for you. So to dial it back for a second and stop speaking so much jargon speak, dynamic pricing is basically adjusting your nightly rate based on a bunch of different factors like demand, seasonality, which I've already touched on, competition for other properties in your market, and other booking trends or like holidays, rather than just setting a fixed price for any time and hoping that it works. So dynamic pricing is the opposite of set it and forget it. However, with softwares like PriceLabs, sometimes it cannot lure you into setting it and forgetting it. But even if you have a PriceLabs subscription and they help you with your dynamic pricing, you still need to be in there, I would say at least weekly, kind of tweaking things if things aren't working, so that you can continue to stay active in the OTA algorithms like Airbnb and VRBO's algorithms, and just so that you can have a pulse on your numbers and your revenue, because that's never a bad thing. Now that I have dissected what dynamic pricing is, it is actively pricing your nightly rate based off of the demand in your season or in your market. Now, let's look at some of the different things that we can do to tweak pricing. I have my PriceLabs account opened up here on my computer. And I am just going to kind of click around and tell you some of the different ways that I have used PriceLabs in the past and some of the capabilities just that it contains. So PriceLabs, like I mentioned before, is a software that is going to help you with dynamically pricing your property. It pulls in a ton of data. It is data from your local market. It picks up on trends. For example, the Kentucky property, it has picked up on the trend, obviously, of the Kentucky Derby. So it automatically increases prices of those specific dates based off of the booking patterns of people that are booking other properties in that area. It does the same thing if you're in an area that hosts, let's say, a lot of concerts or music festivals. If there are like baseball games or sports events around, PriceLabs can detect those fluctuations in booking patterns so that they can then dynamically price your property to match the demand in that area so that you're not leaving money on the table. Likewise, so that you're not overpricing for some like a season that might be slower. Okay, I'm going to start with the basics of PriceLabs. There are three numbers that you're going to see as soon as you log into your paid PriceLabs account. This is based off of a paid subscription. You pay per listing. So if you have one listing, it's going to be different pricing than if you have 3, 5, 7, 9 listings, etc. But the three numbers that you see are the minimum, the base, and the maximum price. I'm going to start at base pricing. We determine base pricing based off of the market comparisons, based off of the property size, based off of the amenities that we have in our listings, based off of the interior design of said listing, and of course, the branding of that listing. PriceLabs will help you choose a base price. The only caveat I will add to this is that sometimes if the listing is so unique, it's a little bit more challenging to pull comps that are just based off of like room or bed and bath count. Because I will use Kentucky as an example. For the longest time, we were the only 5-bed, 5.5-bath house in that area, except for one other. However, the two listings were just not comparable in terms of design and amenities and guest experience. So while they were the same in bed and bath count, they were not the same in anything else. And we were priced much higher, but still getting booked more frequently. We had a higher occupancy than that other property. If you use PriceLabs to help you choose a base price, please be sure that there are accurate comps in your area before you start booking at a lower nightly rate based off of comps that are lower than you in the market. Well, I guess then they wouldn't be comps, but you know what I mean. The minimum price is this is the price we do not want to go lower than. This protects you as an owner. It protects your profitability. It helps you to never price emotionally. So we're not going to see an open space on the calendar and suddenly just drop everything to like bare bones bottom, because it's actually going to, in the long run end up costing us if A, we get a guest in there that we don't actually want in there and they cause damage to the property. And B, it actually does cost you money to be able to have those guests in there. So we want to make sure that you booking those nights out is actually going to be worth the rate that you're getting. The next price that we put in there is the maximum. And I know that some people decide to leave the maximum open. And I so far have not seen it priced like totally outrageously for the 3 listings that I host. However, I do put a max on all of ours just because I don't ever want it to come to a point where I might forget to check PriceLabs and see that suddenly this 2-bed, 1-bath dome in the middle of the mountains is now priced at like $1,000 a night. If we could get that, absolutely great. But based off of the comps in the area, it's not going to happen. So I do put a maximum for all of our listings with the caveat. I feel like there's always like, but with the Kentucky listing for those Derby nights, we do surpass that maximum point, but it will allow you to manually override things. So if for whatever reason, the dynamic pricing that you see on the calendar is not matching what the demand to be, or if you know you are leaving money on the table by going with the pricing that's in PriceLabs, you can manually override the prices that are spit out by the algorithm so that you can actively tweak them. Now we've got our minimum, base, and maximum pricing. A couple of other things that I look at in terms of my PriceLabs account. There are like different levers that you can pull based off of the knowledge you have of your property. For example, you can do this strategy called far out pricing. So if you know that your typical booking window is, let's say, 30 days, but you sometimes have the occasional outlier of having a person that plans far out in advance. So you have somebody that's booking 90 days in advance. We don't want to undervalue those future dates. So you can have a higher price point if they're booking out 90 days in advance. And that is a setting that you can put in PriceLabs so that you're then able to control that. I don't want to say set it and forget it, but to an extent, you can set it and forget it for the far out pricing. Now, on the flip side of that, you can also do that for last minute pricing. That's a different strategy. So as the date gets closer, the booking window gets tighter. So let's say, like you said, I said your average booking date is 30 days out. But now let's say we're in a 14-day window. The way I have ours is that once we hit that 14-day window, those prices are going to gradually decrease day by day until the dates are booked or until we hit our minimum nightly rate. So I'm lowering, 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 lowering. And then if they book last minute, then they get a better deal, so to speak. And again, that can be overridden for certain dates. Like let's say you have a really Morgan Wallen, he's coming to Nashville and somehow your place is left unbooked. Well, you're not going to drop those prices for something that you know for an event that's coming in. Like you can manually override those so that they are at that higher price point still, because if somebody's waiting till the last minute, they must pay a premium in order to get your place that's right next to the wherever they play in Nashville.
Hey host, let me ask you a question. How are you managing your short-term rental operations? If you're still juggling between multiple apps and platforms, it's really time to simplify with Lodgify. I just started using Lodgify for my properties, and I have to say it's a game changer. The unified inbox lets me manage all my messages in one place, and there's no more bouncing back between the Airbnb app and the VRBO app. Their task management system is perfect when scheduling and working with cleaners or contractors. It keeps everyone on track and ensures that nothing slips through the cracks. And one of my favorite features, the direct booking site. It's super easy to set up, very user-friendly, and it helps me reduce my reliance on OTAs like Airbnb and VRBO, and I get to keep more of that booking revenue. Lodgify's support team is also top-notch. They were incredibly responsive and thorough during that onboarding process initially, which made the switch to their platform absolutely seamless. Here's the best part. You can get 20% off your annual subscription when you use my link. Head to www.brandonmarket.co/Lodgify to sign up and start streamlining your property management today.
One of the other things that I like outside of just the pricing strategies that you can do in PriceLabs, you can also click on the neighborhood data section. So you'll see different tabs. First is calendar, second is neighborhood data. In that section, you're actually able to pull the comps that are in your area based off of the map. Like I'm looking at our map right now for Luna, and we have a few different comps in our area. They're not as uniquely designed. So there's like an element of humanness to this, like selecting comps scenario. But we have a couple that are still in this like area that are relatively similar, but none that have the caliber of design that Luna has. So I am going to pull the comps that are based off of the bed and bath count. And I'm going to look to see, okay, if we're not booked as densely as we would like, Then let's see what the other nightly rates are for the comparable properties in our area. So I have a cabin that is very rustic, but it is like probably a quarter mile from our house. Like our minimum nightly rate is 165 and theirs is 104. Drastic difference. I also see that they have a 1 night minimum instead of a 2 night minimum, which we have. We could probably adjust those nightly minimums for it to be 2 nights on the weekends and 1 night during the weekday to try and maximize revenue without sacrificing those prime weekend dates. So that's something that this data, this like market data is telling me. Another thing that I see is that our cleaning fee is much higher than everyone else's. Ours is 125 and the rest of them range from $30. Oh, that's low. $30 all the way to $100. So perhaps us adjusting our cleaning fee could help us with booking rates. The next thing that I see that only one, two, three of the actually no, two comps of the like 8 that I pulled. I'm looking at their Airbnb service fees and I'm seeing that only 2 of them have the host only fee. And if they have the host only fee at this point, that means they are using a PMS system like I use Lodgify. So Lodgify, I don't think I've done a full episode on Lodgify. I might have to do that soon. Lodgify is a PMS system, so that stands for Property Management System. And what I use that for is a couple of different things. First, I use it for the unified messaging inbox feature. So it doesn't matter where they book, whether that's Airbnb, VRBO, or direct booking on our site. I have all of my messages there in one inbox so that I don't have to respond on each of the individual OTAs and keep up with our direct booking site. The next thing I use Lodgify for is our direct booking site. So while I create a custom direct booking site, I can take a widget from Lodgify and embed it directly into our custom site. If custom is not the route for you, you are able to create a direct booking site directly within Lodgify, which is like I said, the PMS system. Hospitable, Guesty, Owner Res, those are a couple. HostAway are a few different other PMSs, and I believe for the most part, all of them have the direct booking site capability and also the widget capability if you want to embed them in a direct custom site, which is a service that we offer. Just throwing that out there. I'll link the calendar to get on the calendar for a consult call if a direct booking site is on your radar. But that is not the goal for this episode. The goal for this episode is to troubleshoot pricing. So I see that the ones that are still on the split fee, oh yeah, that's how I got on that tangent. Split fee versus host fee. Host only fee means they are using a PMS system. And obviously Airbnb is aware of that because in October of last year, Airbnb converted everyone that was using a PMS system and had that integration on their listing. They converted them to a 15.5% service fee rather than a 3% service fee for hosts. A split fee is the host pays 3%, the guest pays 12.5%, but that means that the listing is only through Airbnb. They're not connected to any site type of outside PMS system. And it looks like pretty overwhelmingly the ones that have more bookings are split fee. And so that tells me that I don't want to blame everything on the Airbnb algorithm, but that tells me that the Airbnb algorithm is promoting the split fee listings higher in the algorithm than they are probably the host only fee, because that means that people are only on Airbnb and they're not trying to push people to other platforms, i.e. a direct booking site or VRBO, whatever it might be. So that's something that's interesting as well. Okay, sorry to skip around, guys. I know I just went from the numbers to the neighborhood data back to a couple of the different settings that you can do. We've already touched on the last minute pricing. We have touched on the far out pricing, but one of the other cool capabilities of PriceLabs is that you can create what's called Orphan day pricing. what an orphan day is let's say you have a 3-night minimum on your property and you're booked from Friday to Wednesday, and then you are booked again on the next Friday. Well, then there's going to be 2 nights in there, Wednesday night and Thursday night, that would not be able to be booked based off of your 3-day minimum. However, you can put orphan day pricing, which means it's kind of wedged up against two bookings where you can then open those dates and allow for a 2-day booking when it is technically orphan days so that you're able to maximize revenue. That's one thing that I wanted to shout out about PriceLabs is that it is very helpful. And the whole point of this, right, is to maximize revenue. We don't want to panic price and just drop our prices immediately because we are leaving money on the table and we could potentially cause more damage to the property, cost ourselves a higher cost of doing business by lowering those nightly rates. Okay, so this brings us to our next question. Like, what I've done all the research, I know the numbers, but like, what do I do when my calendar isn't full? And this is kind of what we're going through right now. And I want to start with what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to slash prices immediately. I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to assume that we are failing at being short term rental hosts. Instead, I'm going to take those open spaces in the calendar and try to use them as data. And like I did just now, I tried to compare what the market was telling me based off of the available information that I have. So it's telling me right now that the average market occupancy for the month of April is going to be 57%. We are nowhere near 57%, which we should be. So, or at least it was 57% in the 2025. We are going to take a look at what we could be doing. Is everybody slow or is it just me? Right now, it looks like it's mostly me and maybe a couple of those other host-only fee listings, but we still don't want to use that as an excuse. Like I said, we're not just going to blame it on the Airbnb algorithm. We're now going to review any of the PriceLabs recommendations. So PriceLabs just came out with this new feature of Listing Optimizer. And Listing Optimizer is basically like AI combing your listing to see if there's any feedback. And so I did that. It is an additional paid feature. You pay for it monthly. I paid for it for 1 month and then canceled it because I felt like I got the feedback that I needed to get. You can always do that to figure out what might be improvable about your listing. Next, I'm going to take those take those suggestions and optimize my listing. It said that my photos might not be accurately representing the property. Like I don't have my top tier images in my top 5. So that's a place that people look when they're booking on Airbnb. Are there any other images that are going to better sell this property that I could put in my top 5? And we're going to focus on that. Is the title accurate and currently working? So we recently just did a little bit of a switch in our titling strategy. So instead of having a long, wordy description of the property, we split it up into smaller amenities that were then split by the long bars. Basically, when I did the listing optimizer, the AI told me that those are not recognizable characters and I need to change. So we're going to go look into changing those because it said dome home, creekside, fire pit, family friendly. That was the title. So we're going to tweak it and see if anything changes. Next, it told me that the amenities that I had listed, I did not have pictures of all of them. So that was I was pretty impressed that it picked up on that because we have in our amenities that we have an outdoor dining area and a grill and a stargazing dome. The pavilion where the grill is not complete yet. You can use the grill, yes, but we wanted to paint it and we wanted to make it really, really beautiful. We did everything renovation wise on the inside, but we hadn't got to everything on the outside because we were doing it in the dead of winter and it was 15 degrees. We haven't gotten to that part of it yet. And so I hadn't listed that pavilion, but it still said we had a grill. So basically it picked up on the fact that I checked the grill box on the Airbnb listing, but didn't take a photograph and list it in the Airbnb listing. Same thing goes with the stargazing dome. We hadn't staged it yet when we had the photographer out. First of all, it was just a very foggy, gloomy, kind of creepy looking day. The leaves on the trees were not green yet, and we had not staged the outdoor furniture in the stargazing dome. So I was like, you say you have a stargazing dome, but you don't have a picture of the stargazing dome. So because our listing didn't match the photos, it said that potentially Airbnb could be pushing us lower in the algorithm because of that, because it was ruining trust. And I was like, okay, wow. I did not mean to ruin trust. I just didn't want to mislead people. But by not wanting to mislead people, I misled people. I learned quite a bit throughout that process and have been working to be able to tweak the listing to make it as accurate as possible. One other thing that I want to touch on in terms of pricing is actually it can be applied prior to closing and post closing if you are doing more research on pricing, if you're not having as booked of a calendar as you want to be. I love pulling the comps in PriceLabs, like I just told you in the neighborhood data section, but you can also pull them from AirDNA. There is a free version of AirDNA and a paid version of AirDNA, but I cannot tell you how many times I've run reports for people on their city and state to see what the average daily rates are, what the occupancy rate is, what the competition looks like on AirDNA. And you can do that without having a PriceLabs account. If there is a location that you want to double check or you want to dive a little bit deeper into, I would absolutely love to be able to do that for you. That's one of my favorite, like I said, I'm the creative girly, but we're doing numbers today. I love running reports on AirDNA. So if you DM me the word report, it will automatically ask you, my little mini chat thing will ask you for your email address, and then it'll ask you for the city and state that you're either looking to purchase in or have already purchased in to compare your daily rate to the rest of the comps in your city. I'm happy to send you a quick Loom video recording to show you exactly what the competition is doing if you don't have that paid version of AirDNA. Let me back up. AirDNA is basically it's aggregates all of the information about all of the listings so that you can do this market research before pulling the trigger on a potential listing if you are looking to buy. And it helps you compare the data for any existing listing as well. Whew, that was like a really nitty gritty episode. I'm sorry if I trailed off a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that if you're in the same boat as us, where this year, 2026, feels a little bit different and it feels a little bit scary because you were able to have some pretty easy success in the past and you're looking into the future and needing to figure out ways to optimize your listing, to differentiate your listing, and therefore raise your revenue. You're not alone. I'm in the same boat as you, and I do this all day, every day. So if you want to have a conversation about it, please feel free to DM me on Instagram at brandandmarket.co. And if you want me to do a Loom video for you to run an AirDNA report to get some insights into your city and state, please just DM me on Instagram, DM me the word report, and I will be able to get back to you with my little mini chat fancy automation thing as soon as possible. So thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Brand and Market podcast. Until next time, I'm your host, Allie Haney, and cheers to being the best in your brand and your market.
You just completed another episode of the Brand and Market podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.